Bloons TD6 added a roguelike campaign mode. In it, you build a party of monkeys to travel through a map, take on fights, and eventually try to defeat the boss at the end. You get 5 total lives, and there are nearly countless combinations of monkeys and modifiers you can collect along the way. And we will be starting with Quincy. Choosing him gives us a crossbow and red hot rangs as the first 2 monkeys in our party, and splody darts as our starting artifact. It makes any dart thrown have a 20% chance to explode when they expire, dealing damage to nearby balloons. But with this, we jumped into the campaign. You always spawn next to a campfire, which lets you buff your party. You can recruit a new tower, mentor a monkey up an upgrade, or enhance one of your artifacts to make it better. I opted to mentor our boomerang up to a 003 Kylie, as this gives us some solid cheap defense with the hopes of making him a Moab press later. Then we hopped into our first fight. It was on Park Path, and we only had to pop rounds 1 through 10. Don't let that fool you though. These rounds are much more difficult than the base game. Every single balloon type comes early, and the rounds are packed full of balloons. We placed our crossbow, Kylie, and Quincy near the front to start. This setup is well rounded, as the crossbow can pop camos and the Kylie can handle all the leads for the foreseeable future. And what's nice is that they work well with our other 2 artifacts. We spent our 9 artifact points to bring in Ceramic Chunker and Frosted Tips. These give primary monkeys plus 3 damage to ceramics, and dart monkeys apply permafrost to balloons, making them move slower after being hit. We crushed the first few rounds, keeping everything at the very start of the track, and this brought us to our first boost of the run. We get to choose a temporary boost every few rounds to help us for the rest of our current tile. You can pick a buff like increasing the attack speed of magic monkeys, or you can add a monkey to your party, but it's only a one-time use. Because we didn't have any magic monkeys to buff, we picked up the 300 druid and put him behind the rest of our defenses. Normally, I like to buff my monkeys as much as possible, but getting a unique one down is always fun. But our druid plus another crossbow was more than enough to beat the first fight, and we got awarded 2 tokens for winning. These can be spent at shops to get new artifacts to buff your party, but we're not quite there yet. We have to beat another fight first. This time it's on logs, and we need to beat rounds 2 through 13. Every fight we take will make the rounds start and end later, causing them to get tougher with time. But for now, we use the same starting towers, but added a 230 dart monkey up front. I figured we had the money, and once you place down a monkey from your party, you have to wait 4 rounds to place it again. So while we waited for more Kylies and crossbows, we watched our triple shot darts explode with every throw. This was working very well, so we picked up a 203 ninja as our boost and put him down ASAP. He makes leads even easier and will help out with camos if they get to be a bit much. But the rest of the run was pretty easy. We got a spike factory on the right side of the track and upgraded our Kylie to a 024 Moab press in case Blimp started heading our way. But that was more than enough to win, giving us 1 token and access to a shop. Here, we were able to trade Splody Darts and 3 tokens for Esoteric Elementalist. This adds a 101 wizard to our party and gives wizards the chance to freeze, blow back, or set balloons on fire with each attack. I didn't know how strong it would end up being, but more on that later. And this brought us to our first junction. We can go right, have less fights, and have an easier road to the boss, or we can go left for a challenge tile, campfire, and 2 chests, but we have to fight through 4 tiles. Now, I like to go big or go home, so we had to choose the harder route, and with that, we took on Tree Stump. But this time, we start with Quincy and a 302 wizard. He has camo detection, decent popping power, and most importantly, works with our new artifact, so he can freeze, blow back, or set balloons on fire. The only thing is purple balloons come very early in Rogue Legends, and some of them are camouflaged, so we got down a crossbow as soon as we could since the wizard can't pop them. Our monkeys held the balloons at the start until we could afford a Kylie boomerang, which we got just in time for leads. I didn't realize they'd be that close. I was too focused on watching our wizard freeze balloons from time to time. But after getting another crossbow, it was time to save up for the Moab press upgrade. This is surprisingly expensive because of how Rogue Legends works. The monkeys in your party are cheaper than in the normal game, but upgrading them after costs more. So there's a huge advantage to mentoring your party up to the upgrades you want. You just have to make sure they're not too expensive to start with, as that would be an instant loss. We got our boomer up to a 024 and found that Moab start coming on round 15. Here there's only 1, but on round 16 there are 3. Our Moab press knocks them back a bit, making them easier to pop, but these Moabs and the balloons that layered on top of them got all the way around the tree stump. Not an issue for now, but we need to be ready for more in the future. I thought we had our strat down. The early game was easy since we had lead and camo popping power, we could upgrade our Kylies to Moab presses for blimps, and we could pick up any boost we want just for fun. But then round 19 came and we faced our first camo lead, and we had no way of popping it. Quincy didn't have his explosive arrows yet, and our Moab presses can't see camos, so I really regretted selling Splody darts. But we just had to let them through. We had plenty of health to tank it, but I don't know how we're going to stop these in the future. For now though, we need to focus on Bloonarius. We hit our first challenge tile, and it's a boss rush event. Here, we face a weakened version of Bloonarius, and we try to pop him as many times as possible before he leaks. Popping him 20 times gets us a common artifact, 35 will give us a rare one, and 50 or more will get a legendary. Unfortunately for us, we don't have the best boss monkeys right now, so we'll see how this goes. We started with a Kylie, crossbow, arcane mastery, and dart monkey up front, put Quincy in the back to catch any leaking balloons, and picked up magic inspiration as our boost, which gives our magic monkeys 10% more pierce and extra range. And with that, Bloonarius burst onto the screen. Right away, we could feel how low our damage was. We were not popping him fast, and that is the main way of getting money in these events. Slowly though, we crosspathed our crossbow, triple shot, and Kylie for a little better performance. And once our monkeys came back in stock, we got a 202 wizard in the middle of the map. I planned on saving straight up to make him an arcane mastery, but then we got saved by the temp boosts. We got a 002 sniper. While not the best right now, upgrading him will easily be our best boss popper. For now though, we'll leave him as a faster firing. So we put him on the platform, set him to strong, and went back to our wizard, making him a 302. This way he can help out Quincy quite a bit with any bloons on the back half of the map. Around this time, we sold our monkeys up front since they couldn't reach Bloonarius anymore, and spent our money on the pedestal towers. We got a crossbow, upgraded the sniper, and then we rolled a Moab Mauler as a boost. He does tons of Moab damage for how cheap he is, so I made sure to get him down right away. And from here, the plan was simple. Upgrade the sniper to a 204 for some insane single target damage, and load the back of the map with monkeys to defend the exit. And over the next few rounds, we were able to pop Bloonarius 26 times before he leaked. Enough for a common artifact. And the one we chose was Divine Inspiration. It adds a super monkey to our party and gives all supers the chance to crit for tons of extra damage. Obviously, we had to play with this new artifact, so the next fight we started with a super monkey, crossbow, Kylie, and Quincy. I wasn't sure how good it'd be, but we're on the easiest map in the game, so it's the perfect time to test it out. It took until the end of round 13 for crits to start to play a role, but even here we couldn't really see any extra damage outside of the balloons flashing yellow for a second. Once Moab started coming though, the super monkey was attacking more and we saw more of these smites, and the tankier the balloon was, the better the crit did. But at this point, we had to start worrying about camo leads. I tried to get a shimmer in time for the first one, but I spent too much money elsewhere. So like usual, we leaked the one on round 19. Luckily for us, we rolled a 022 Buccaneer, which popped every camo lead going forward. And after upgrading it to a cannon ship, we weren't really scared of anything, and we coasted to victory. That brings us to a campfire where we mentored our super monkey up to start with knockback. This makes him cost $4,400 to place now, but compared to placing a base super and buying knockback in a fight, we're saving $1,300. And I have plans of making him a Dark Knight in the future. This extra cost only let us start with a super and crossbow in our next fight, but man, was that early knockback nice. And once we had the money to back him up with a Kylie and by Ultravision, the rounds got easy. No balloon was a threat, and the only thing slowing the super down was when leads would lead the charge and we had to wait for the Kylie to pop their outer layer. To get around this, we got another boomer up front and our lead problem was solved. What was surprising though was how far the Moabs got on round 15 and 16. I felt like we had some solid defense, but the balloons inside would get past sometimes. What I didn't know at the time was every fight we take makes the balloons get 5% faster and tankier. So these Moabs had 30% more health than normal and the balloons were moving 30% faster. This is another downside of taking the longer route. The more fights we take, the harder they get. But our goal is to outscale the balloons with the extra rewards. The rest of the fight was pretty normal though. We leaked the first camo lead as we had nothing that could pop it, and to stop the 6 that come on round 20, we had to sell one of our Kylies and spend almost $3,000 upgrading Quincy to level 7 to get explosive shots. This lets him fire exploding arrows every third shot, solving our camo lead problem. And with that, we cruised through the rest of the fight. The only things that got far were the balloons inside BFBs, but we weren't ever at risk of leaking. But this win gave us access to 2 chests where we got unification and slower is harder. The first makes primary monkeys count as all categories, but their attack range is reduced by 20%, and the latter reduces projectile speed by 35%, but increases our damage by 15%. A great trade-off if you ask me. But now we have another choice to make. take the short route that only has one fight before the final straightaway, or we can go to the right that has 7 fights but has way more rewards. We're talking 2 extra chests, an extra challenge tile, and a campfire. Not to mention all the extra shop tokens we'd get from the fights. The only downside is how fast and healthy the Bloons will be by the end, but because we're taking on Dreadbloon, we went for the longer route. His special ability is becoming immune to different monkey types, so we have to have a couple solid towers by the time we get to him, and the right path will help us do that. Our next fight is where things started to click though. I wanted to use more wizards because of that artifact and to let us pop those tricky camo leads. So we had a couple arcane masteries in the back, and I built a shimmer on round 17. This gives the wizard a new attack that removes the camo property off of Bloons inside his radius, finally giving us camo detection for every monkey. This made us pretty low on Moab damage though, but once we broke them open, the fire, freeze, and blowback effects on our wizards helped out a ton. Like when we finally popped the fortified Moab in round 19 and we instantly froze the ceramics inside. And surprisingly, the wizard's shimmer can apply these effects too. To help with blimps, we worked towards some Moab presses, getting our second one on round 24. But now we didn't know what to get. We picked up a 420 bomb shooter and a cave monkey to help stall the Bloons, but on round 29, we made the decision of the run, picking up a necromancer. Not only are his reanimated Bloons super strong with all the magic monkey buffs we pick up throughout each fight, but each zombie Bloon can freeze, blow back, or set Bloons on fire, easily making it our best monkey. This destroyed the final few rounds, and all we had to do was add a super monkey to help with the ZOMG, but I took note of how good that necro was. The next fight was on end of the road. We started with a Shimmer, Kylie, Crossbow, and Quincy. Finally, we are good versus camos, and we were holding the Bloons to the start of the map until Moab started coming. Their increased health is really starting to be a problem, as even the round 15 one almost made it to the end, and we were really low on money. Between using Quincy's ability and picking up a Berserker Brew, we were able to hold them off, until the fortified one came on round 19. This not only got through, but made us lose the fight, costing us 1 of our 5 lives for the entire campaign. We tried again, this time starting with Quincy, a Kylie, and a 002 Super Monkey. This should do much better against Moabs, especially if we get some Super Monkey crits. Fast forward to round 19, and we got enough money to get a Shimmer for the camo lead, and the rest of our defenses were just enough to pop the fortified Moab without leaking. And this is when Super Tatum pointed out that the rules menu shows us Bloons stats. They currently have 140% speed and health, which is why it's getting so tough. Throughout the rest of the 20s, we upgraded the Kylie to a Moab Press, picked up a Submarine, and upgraded our Super to a 202 with plans of making him a Dark Knight. But man, I should have just upgraded the Shimmer to a Necromancer, because round 29 is just a tougher round 63 in a normal game, and it blew right through us, making us lose a second life, and I was starting to get worried. We have so many fights after this, and we're on an easy map. If we can't win here, we don't stand a chance. So I gave it another go. This time, we started with a Shimmer, Kylie, and Quincy. The start was a bit rough as we leaked down to 117 lives, but at the end of round 11, we could afford the Necromancer. And here things turned around. No rush was too big for us, and we just had to worry about Moabs. So we put down a Cave Monkey and got another Kylie, with plans of making them presses in the future. The first few blimps got pretty far, but once they had to float through the army of reanimated Bloons, they popped pretty quick. This set us up well for the 20s, where we picked up a Druid of the Storm, upgraded our Kylies to Moab presses, and made another Necromancer. I figured plenty of Bloons come in these rounds to support 2 graveyards. We built this on round 29, where we actually handled the rushes pretty well, and it was cool to have our zombie Bloons traveling in opposite directions. It looks like a busy road with lots of cars, but all we had to do was pick up another press to help with ZOMGs, and we beat end of the road. Still though, 2 lives lost to a single tile is a bit rough. This brings us to a chest where we got Homebrew Alchemy, an artifact that adds a 101 alchemist to our party and reduces their attack reload times and ability cooldowns by 20%, so he'll be able to buff our monkeys even better than normal. We got to play with this a bit in our next fight, but nothing notable happened here. Other than leaking down to 69 lives in round 11 while saving up for a Necromancer, the fight was basically the same as last time. But that brings us to a boss rush tile, this time versus FaZe. Fully convinced that the Necromancer was our best monkey and we needed his D camo, we started with him and a sharpshooter. Unfortunately for us, the start of this event has almost no balloons, so our Necro had an empty graveyard most of the time. So while he was doing basically no damage, our sharpshooter chunked through FaZe, giving us enough money for another crossbow. And between these two, we were at least popping FaZe, just not quickly. This picked up a bit once the wizard could start reanimating Bloons, but that was right as FaZe was leaving his attack range. We slowly started placing monkeys in the middle of the map and waited for FaZe to loop back in range of our first few towers. But during this time, we did so little damage to him that I wish we would have just sold everything and placed new monkeys down. This is what we ended up doing when FaZe headed towards the last loop and we plopped down a 0-1-2 super monkey. Instantly, we saw a massive jump in damage and realized this was the play. We sold just about everything and made him a Dark Knight. This makes him a machine at popping FaZe, but we're incredibly weak to leads. So we buffed him with some alchemists to give him lead popping power and better stats. Then our extra money was spent on picking up crossbows. But this let us pop FaZe 29 times before he leaked. It's funny how much better our super monkey did than everything else. Had we just started with him, we might have gotten a rare or legendary artifact, but this score let us get a common flaming hot puncherang, which makes red hot rangs have less pierce but knock back Bloons and can set them on fire, which should be really nice with our Kylies. And we followed this Boss Rush tile up with a chest. Unfortunately, there weren't any good artifacts for us in here, so we got portability. This grants us one portable lake and pontoon per tile, which could come in handy later on. But now we have a fight at Winter Park, and we started with something new. A necromancer and an alchemist. I didn't plan on placing the elk yet, but the first Bloon being a lead kind of forced our hand. I'm not mad though, as necromancers are amazing with elk buffs. Over the next few rounds, we backed this up with our standard Kylie and Quincy, but round 16 was tough. The Moabs are healthy enough to get through our Necromancer, and some of the Bloons inside made it to the end of the track. Here, we got pretty lucky as the Kylie and Wizards attacks carried all the way over there and popped several Bloons before they leaked. Even with this though, we dropped down to 54 lives. After upgrading our Kylie to a press on round 17, Blimps got a bit easier. We even popped most of the fortified Moab on 19. We would have lost had the Boomer not set all the Bloons on fire with its new artifact, but he was able to bring them all down to blues, so we beat the round with 32 lives left. After getting a Super Monkey and some temp boosts, Bloons stopped making it through our defenses. Even the BFBs popped pretty quick. But then a fortified one came on round 27. Fortified Moabs were scary at this point, let alone an even bigger blimp. But then the Super Monkey hit a crit, completely skipping over the Moab stage, and we cleaned up the Bloons inside. An actual lifesaver. To help with these in the future, we got down another Moab press. This worked great until round 31. We had two big problems. The first is how many Bloons get sent our way, and the second is that the round ends with a ZOMG. To handle the Bloons, we got another Necromancer, and it was barely enough for the rushes, and we just prayed we'd be fine for the ZOMG. Once everything else was popped, the presses and super stalled it for quite some time, but the only reason we actually popped this green turtle was the Super Monkey crit right before we broke its outer layer, letting us skip the BFB portion. Just another clutch moment from our Super Monkey. And once we started popping the Moabs, the Necros graveyards filled back up and they could help once again. This took out most of the Bloons, and we just had to micro one Necro to protect the exit from any leakers. All of this for one ZOMG, and more are coming soon. So we got another press and some more temp boosts, which actually made them much less scary. But right as we got here, DDTs made an appearance. The first ones come on round 35 and we barely popped them. The last one was leaving the Necro's range when it burst, and had it gotten through, there's not much we could have done. Our solution? Add another Berserker Brew to give other monkeys lead popping power, more damage, pierce, and attack speed. And surprisingly, this was plenty. DDTs weren't a problem anymore, and we even popped the fortified ZOMG on 39 without fear of leaking. And round 40 was a piece of cake. But that brings us to the next challenge tile, beating round 12 through 43 on Frozen Over using the least cash possible. And we need a legendary artifact here, so we'll try to leave $21,525 or more on the counter. To start, we place a Necro into Kylie, upgrading it to a Moab press on round 16. This was more than enough to handle the Moabs for now, but we backed them up with Quincy and another press once we could afford it. On an easy map like this, we should be good with two presses for quite some time, but I didn't know what else to spend our money on. Everything we have that adds a ton of damage is pretty expensive, but then we rolled a Dragon's Breath. This guy is incredibly strong with our wizard artifact because his flamethrower and walls of fire can freeze and push back the balloons. So we obviously put him down. For a while, I was debating buying a Berserker Brew for him, but before I came to a decision, we got a stronger stim as a boost. So I gave that to our two wizards. This gave us plenty of damage for now and left us with just enough money for a third Moab press. I didn't want to overthink anything, and there wasn't anything else that caught my eye that would guarantee us a legendary artifact. This setup made its way through the 30s. Each time we could pick a buff, we'd pick temp boosts to make our defenses better for free and hoped it'd be enough. The DDTs in the 30s weren't a problem, but surprisingly, the occasional ZOMG would get far. The fortified one on round 39 made it to the final pass of our monkeys, and the 2-1-40 were even scarier as we had to micro both wizards. But round 42 is where we ran into problems. We just couldn't pop all the DDTs that come on this round, and honestly, it wasn't even close. So we spent the money to upgrade our Dragon's Breath to a Summon Phoenix, sacrificing the legendary artifact to get the win. This easily puts us in the rare artifact range, and the Phoenix ability crushed the black blimps. But then round 43 came, and with it a screen full of fortified DDTs. I used the wizard's ability again, but several were going to get through. We exited to home and tried again. This time bought another Necromancer and hit play. But this still let 2 DDTs through. On the next attempt we got a Dark Knight, but we hit our money limit before we could buy Plasma Blast, so he couldn't even damage the DDTs. And that's when reality started to set in. There's a bug that if you exit to home after buying a monkey and you load back in, the monkey won't be down, but it will be out of stock. So we can't try a Necromancer or Super Monkey again, which means we only have one more try. We bought a Turbocharge and a Moab Press, desperately trying to just get the win. We used both abilities, but were too slow to popping the DDTs before they leaked. Had I used the Phoenix earlier, we might have popped them all, but that was our last try. So we failed the challenge and didn't even get a common artifact. Now, we could spend a life to try again, but because we're already down to just 3 lives, I didn't want to risk it. So we're just going to eat this failure and move on. Honestly, a tragedy. The next 2 fights were roughly the same as what we've been doing. Start with a Necromancer, get some Moab Presses for the mid game, and do whatever it takes to pop the DDTs in the 30s and 40s. Really, the only cool new thing we did was pick up a 203 Super Monkey in both these runs, and that actually helped out quite a bit, especially when they crit. But these fights gave us a chest and a campfire. In the chest, we got bouncing projectiles, which makes all of our attacks bounce off objects and travel 10% farther, and we used the campfire to mentor our Kylie up to a Moab Press. This was an easy choice, as none of our artifacts got massive upgrades from enhancing them, and we've been making 3 or more Moab Presses per fight, so this should save us quite a bit of money. And we went into Monkey meta with newfound confidence. We started with a Necro and our new toy, the Moab Press. It was weird having it so early, and it made the Moabs on round 16 easy, even though they're getting up there in extra health. And it only took until round 18 before we could afford Quincy and another Press. It really helps that this guy only costs $2,600 now. And here, I didn't know what to get. Maybe another Necro, maybe it was time to save up for a Dark Knight. But then a 3/0/0 wizard was offered to us. While not as good as a Dragon's Breath, we can crosspath him with Wall of Fire, which works great with our setup, especially since we can target it on the intersection. This will be good for a while, but we backed it up with 2 more presses and a Necromancer. I figured we'd be getting them eventually, so we might as well get them down now. And this carried us until round 34, where the ZOMG surprisingly got through. It only took 1 retry to beat it though, as we only needed to buff our wizard with a Berserker Brew. I thought this would be enough for a while, but DDTs were tough for us. The few on 35 got farther than I'd like, and we actually leaked the ones on 37. Luckily, we had over $9,000 saved up and a 210 Super Monkey boost ready to go. We put him in back, picked up Epic Range, and were able to pop the DDTs. Over the next few rounds, we got down Greg for extra stalling, upgraded the Super to a Robo Monkey, and worked towards buffing it with a Berserker Brew. I thought we were sitting in a good spot, as this is the most defense we've ever had this campaign. I mean, even the DDTs on 42 were easy, but round 43 had other ideas. Not only did the fortified DDTs get through, it wasn't really that close, and we even microed a Necromancer. It was cool seeing the Super's plasma bounce off the walls though. We loaded back in and saw that we were basically out of money and some of our monkeys were out of stock, meaning we don't have a chance at beating this round. So we tanked the loss and spent a life to skip the fight. I just didn't think we'd get through as is. What helped me make this decision was the campfire we can now visit, and we used this cozy fire to get 2 lives back. An absolute shame that we can't mentor our wizard or super monkey up a tier, but there's no way I'm going to head into the last fight and then the boss with only 1 life. So the decision was easy, but this was a pretty bad couple minutes for us. On to the final fight before Dreadbloon. It's on Town Center and we have to beat rounds 15 through 52. We started off with a Necromancer and Moab Press like we usually do, and it was just enough to beat the first round. Then we backed them up with Quincy, another Moab Press, and got a 042 Mortar Monkey from a boost. We probably should have gotten a monkey buff here, but I wanted to mix up the towers from what we've been using. In fact, I was really feeling new towers, as after getting a couple more presses and a Necro, we went on a spree of new monkeys. We got an Embrittlement, a 042 Turbocharge, and a 032 Dragon's Breath, all to make DDTs easier. I figured that's what's been causing us to lose, so we might as well counter them as best we can. Even with this though, the fortified DDTs on 43 got through and we had to retry. My solution? Sell the mortar and get a 202 Super Monkey. The mortar had run its course and we need some DDT poppers in there now. But with this substitution and a little bit of microing the Necros, we were able to beat these fortified spiders. Then we upgraded this Super Monkey to a Dark Knight on round 45, right as the fortified DDTs started coming. And with this upgrade, we actually popped them just fine. This made me think we'd be good for a while, as we just popped fortified DDTs and ZOMGs, but then round 46 hit us with so many blimps that our towers got pierce capped. Even with our abilities, a few Bloons got through, bringing us down to 130 lives. We clearly needed some more popping power, so we gave our Turbocharge and Dark Knight a Berserker Brew and hit play. And to my surprise, a bad came swimming onto the track. I'd be scared of a normal bad here, let alone one with extra health. Luckily, we popped its outer layer about halfway through the map, and the insides were easy thanks to all our Moab presses. Over the final few rounds, we faced several more bads, but nothing was that challenging. I bet the Dark Knight critting several times per bad helped a ton. He was constantly attacking, so it was fun seeing those yellow smites pop up from time to time. But after popping 2 bads on 52, we beat Town Center and made our final preparations before taking on Dreadbloon. This means we're heading to the shop. Because we took so many fights this stage, we have a lot of tokens to spend. 22 in fact, which gives us enough to buy Swelling Spikes, High Impact Glue, and Starting Strong, 3 common artifacts. The first 2 add a Spike Factory and Glue Gunner to our party and give them slightly better stats, and Starting Strong makes all our monkeys attack 15% faster for the first 20 seconds of each round. But with this, we headed into the Dreadbloon fight with 3 lives and a dream. We start on round 15 with $24,000. This gives us enough money for a 203 Dark Knight, a Shimmer, Quincy, and a 022 Boomer. This is the first time in a while that we've gone with this Boomer over the Moab Press, but I want a Turbocharger 2 for when Dreadbloon is immune to magic monkeys. We hit play and hoped for the best. Dreadbloon will be tough, especially since things have 170% health and speed, but bosses are super slow in Rogue Legends, and Dread doesn't spawn his rocky minions until the second skull. So we got through his first stage pretty quick. The second is where things get tough though, as his rock bloons start spawning. Instantly, we were having a rough time dealing with those because of how tanky they were, and this led to us barely damaging Dreadbloon. The nice thing was we would catch up on the rocks every time the Dark Knight crit, but it was just a matter of time until the rounds got too tough for us to beat, so we needed to damage Dreadbloon now. And to do this, we move the Dark Knight back a bit so that when he attacks the rock bloons, he hits Dreadbloon first. And this quickly removed his ceramic shell, making the rock stop spawning. And without these guys to distract our towers, we broke his lead layer quickly. But now we're onto stage 3 and Dreadbloon is immune to magic monkeys. So we sold the Super Monkey to get 2 turbochargers and a Moab Press. This did solid damage to Dreadbloon when their abilities were active, but once they wore off, we were leaking like crazy. So we exited to home and gave it another try. This time, we sold the Super to get a Sharpshooter and Spiked Balls, but the first BFBs that came got right through and made us lose, taking 1 of our 3 lives and making us start over. Now we know how to beat the first 2 skulls, we just need to worry about the third. So we got down our Dark Knight, Shimmer, and Bionic Boomer. This did about the same as last time and got us through the first skull pretty easily. Then, when we started the next phase, we made another Bionic Boomer and started working on a Glue Gunner, as they do pretty well against rock bloons. And because we kept the Super in the best spot the whole time, we broke his ceramic armor much earlier this time around. But that brings us to his Magic Monkey phase. This time we sold the Dark Knight, upgraded the glue to a Bloon Liquefier, got a Moab Press, and bought a Turbocharge once we could afford it. This was about halfway through Dread's ceramic shell, and the Bloons were starting to get far. But once we used the Boomer's ability, we caught back up on all the Bloons and broke through his armor. And just like normal, his lead layer was much easier to deal with. But once we got to his final skull, I made a huge mistake. I tried to sell everything and get our super monkey back, but we didn't have enough money to give him a supporting cast, so we leaked a ton of balloons on round 27, causing us to lose and go down to 1 life. Final try. We did basically the same start, just pulled it off a little better since this is our 3rd time around. We made our way to the support immune phase on round 27 and hadn't leaked at all. Here, we decided not to sell anything because of how well this setup was working. A Bloon Liquefier, Shimmer, Turbocharge, Bionic Boomer, and 2 Moab Presses were the monkeys we chose to stop Dread Bloon. This gives us a solid mixture of stalling blimps while also being able to pop Bloon Rushes layered on top of Rock Balloons. As long as nothing crazy comes, we should be okay. And Dread Bloon is floating right through our center, making every attack hit him. Anytime it was starting to look a bit rough, we activated our Turbocharge's ability, which would catch us up on the balloons and Dread's health would plummet. Eventually, this got us through his final layer of ceramic armor and we cleaned up the remaining rock balloons. And while I should have placed another monkey to help out, we let this run its course. Almost a big mistake as the rushes on round 29 are intense, but as is, only 65 balloons got through at the end. But we lived and popped Dread Bloon shortly after. This not only lets us move on to stage 2 of the campaign, but also gives us a legendary reward. And the one we chose? The Essence of Dread Bloon, a legendary artifact that makes every monkey count as all categories. And tier 5 monkeys and level 20 heroes deal 1.5 times damage to fortified and ceramic balloons. An absolute game changer going forward. But now we get the option to extract an artifact. This sends it home to give you a permanent copy to take into future campaigns, but we won't have it for the remainder of our current one. Because we just got the Essence of Dread Bloon, we sent back Unification, which made our primary monkeys count as all categories, but reduced their attack range. This would only affect us poorly going forward, as every monkey would have less range without any benefits, but it's a good one to use in future campaigns. And with that, we moved on to stage 2 with 1 life and a dream. Luckily, you always start a stage next to a campfire, so we healed up right away. Not something I wanted to do, but making sure we don't have to start completely over is better than a mediocre mentor or enhancement. But now, we have to decide what direction to go. The short right side to avoid the challenging later rounds, or the much longer left track. And while the short path is usually the play, we desperately need to outscale the balloons by getting some more artifacts and campfires. And the left side has 2 legendary fights and 3 more campfires than the right, making my choice pretty easy. Left it is. The first fight we had was on Lotus Island, and we had way less starting money than we were used to. Luckily, the new stage reset the rounds, so we only have to beat 2 through 13, and the balloons are down to just 105% speed. This let us start with Quincy and a crossbow, and we picked up a Moab press once we could afford it. While we won't even face a Moab this fight, he'll be great for popping leads, and he's relatively cheap. But this brought us to our first boost of stage 2, where we picked up Military Quickening. Even though we don't have any military monkeys, this is a great pickup for us because the Essence of Dread Bloon makes the boost affect every monkey we have. I was super excited to try it out, but I couldn't see much of a difference. Sure, the balloons weren't getting as far as before, but it wasn't such a crazy jump in attack speed that we could notice it right away. But from here, we kept taking the temp boost whenever possible and built a Shimmer Wizard. This is our main source of camo detection, and it's nice to know we can afford it before they become a problem in this stage. But with this and an AMD Alchemist, we beat Lotus Island fairly easily. We continued down the left track and made our way to our first legendary fight. If we beat this, we'll get a beautiful artifact. All we have to do is beat rounds 3 through 16 of Sulphur Springs. We started off the same as last fight, Quincy and a crossbow, and we followed it up with a press. But because we're able to fit all our monkeys on the middle rock, defending was even easier. No balloon made it to the exit, and we started working on a shimmer. We got this on round 8, but right after beating the round, we got offered a 0/1/1 wizard as a boost. And because Wall of Fire works so well with our wizard artifact, I sold our first one and placed this new wizard in his spot. It took a couple rounds, but eventually we made him a 0/2/3 shimmer, getting our camo detection back. And from here, we just saved up for the Necromancer upgrade. And once he started spawning zombie balloons, nothing stood a chance. Even the Moabs on 16 were popped in seconds. But this gave us 3 legendary artifacts to choose from. One gives us a Buccaneer and makes them better. The second makes several monkeys act like Dartling Gunners. And the one we chose was Cold Steel, which lets tier 3 or higher military monkeys have a 15% chance to freeze balloons when they hit them. What's great for us though is that this affects all our monkeys because of the Essence of Dread Bloon. And we followed this up with a chest that gave us the rare version of Slower is Harder. This reduces our projectile speed by 35%, but increases our damage by 20%. A fair trade-off if you ask me. And with that, we jumped into our second legendary fight, Tinkerton rounds 4 through 19. Here, we had slightly more money than the last couple fights, as we were able to start with Quincy, a crossbow, and a Moab press, really rounding out our defenses. Normally, this would have been a boring one to watch, but I was absolutely loving seeing the occasional freezes our monkeys were getting, showing that our new artifacts were working how we thought they would. Like usual, we got a shimmer just ahead of our defenses to make every bloon visible, and we learned that even shimmer can freeze bloons. This was happening way too often, but then I realized the freeze chance doubles up with our esoteric elementalist artifact from stage 1. So our wizards are better than ever. But from here, we just kept picking up temp boosts at every opportunity and upgraded our shimmer to a necro on round 14. And this crushed the rest of the fight. Once the zombie bloons got involved, the normal ones didn't stand a chance. This win gave us another legendary boost. We could pick up a Grand Saboteur, an artifact that makes beast handlers better, or Primary Specialist. We chose this last one as it reduces the attack, reload, and cooldown time of primary monkeys by 35%, but every other monkey category gets 15% less pierce and slower cooldowns. This is a little confusing with our setup, but it makes all our monkeys attack faster and have shorter cooldowns, but have a little less pierce. This brings us to Spice Islands, where I was excited to see our new attack speed. We started with our standard monkeys, and we could instantly tell the jump in how fast they attacked. No bloons were making it to Quincy, even the rushes of blacks and whites at the end of round 5 didn't get there. This strong start not only let us take every boost possible, but let us go straight to getting a shimmer on the first island, and his freezes were going crazy on round 12. But this shored up our camo-led weakness, and once we made him a necro, we were ready to coast to victory. I was blown away with how fast he was spawning bloons, but I was kind of worried about keeping his graveyard full. But that's a problem for the future. For now, I just buffed him with a Berserker Brew and got another Moab Press, but these were definitely not needed. This got us the win, but then I did something terrible, and I didn't even notice until I watched back the footage when writing this script. I skipped a campfire. I was so focused on talking to chat and deciding whether I should go left or right that I didn't even make this stop. There's no reason to skip a campfire, and yet we moved on as if nothing happened. Oh well. We chose to go right at the intersection to skip 2 fights and get a boss rush tile. This does cause us to miss out on a shop and a chest, but I thought it'd be worth it. Our one fight this path was on Rake, but it was basically the same as the previous 3. Get a crossbow and press for the early game, reveal camos with a shimmer, and crush the rounds once we could afford a necro. The only difference was that Rake is a slightly harder map than we're used to, so we had to get slightly more defenses before getting down the wizard. But by the end, we could do whatever we wanted. I even put down a recursive cluster from a boost just for fun. But that let us take on a Bloonarius boss rush tile. If we pop them 25 times, we get a common artifact, 40 will give us a rare, and 55 or more will award us a legendary. And I remembered the lesson we learned from our phase boss rush. While our Necro is our best monkey, we need to start with a super monkey for more boss damage. So we got a 0-1-1 super down on the slide and backed him up with a crossbow and Quincy. This leaves us weak to leads, but we'll have plenty of time to solve that. Bloonarius spawned just outside our super's range, but after a few seconds, everything was fine and our super started melting him. This gave us tons of money right away, and we were getting some good rolls on temp boosts, like a legendary quickening. To speed this up even more, we got a second super down on the slide. I was going to upgrade him to have more range and pierce, but normal bloons started to get through. It was only a blue, but if we're already leaking, we should get some more defenses. So we put another crossbow near the back to stop this. This will be fine from now, but we need more boss damage. I wasn't sure what to do, so in the meantime, I gave our supers an AMD. We didn't have much space for more supers, and our defense at the back wasn't great. So we decided to sell the second super monkey and upgrade the first to a Dark Knight. Then we sold a crossbow, teleported our super to where the crossbow was, and buffed him with a Berserker Brew. This allowed us to have this super target the bloons in first, letting nothing leak, while also dealing tons of damage to the boss. This gave us some flexibility since nothing was really an issue, so we started working on another super monkey. We slowly made him a 0-2-3, but the bloon rushes were getting tougher and tougher. So for the first time this fight, we took a monkey over a temp boost, and it was a 0-4-1 druid. While not the greatest bloon popper, he can help with his vines from across the map, and we can make some extra money with his ability. At this point, we really only had one issue. Leads. While not a threat of leaking, they would eat up all our super monkeys' pierce, and sometimes we had to wait until the alchemist popped them. So after finishing our second super monkey, we gave him his own Berserker Brew, upping how many AMDs we have out there. But to permanently solve this, we got down a Necromancer next. I figured we already had plenty of boss popping power, and we just need this guy to handle the normal bloons. This worked so well, as he could defend both tracks and plenty of bloons spawned to keep his graveyard full. But now, I wanted to get ready for when Bloonarius starts spawning harder bloons. So near the back of the map, we started building a 203 Dark Knight. This didn't take long with how fast we were popping Bloonarius, so we buffed him with a stronger stim right as the boss was entering his range. From here, we just kept building Dark Knights and taking temp boosts whenever we could, and this easily got us to the 60 pop threshold. We actually ran out of space to place more super monkeys, so we just saved up our money and made one of them a Dark Champion just for fun. But after popping him 71 times, Bloonarius finally made it to the exit. And our 3 legendary options were portability, which gives us 3 portable lakes and pontoons per tile, homebrew alchemy, which makes elks attack twice as fast, have half off cooldowns, gains a chance to crit, and adds a 002 elk to our party, or heightened perception, which increases the attack range of primary monkeys by 75%, but slows our projectile speed by half. Now, as fun as the Alchemist one sounds, we already have its common variant, and I had to stack onto our category buffs, so I chose the extra range. Excited to see this, we took on Adora's Temple and clicked through our monkeys to see how much range they had. It was awesome seeing towers like the Crossbow and Moab Press being able to see almost the entire map. To take advantage of this, we started with our usual Crossbow, Quincy, and Press, but we put our Crossbow up top to always be attacking. There was just one problem. His bolts were too slow to reach the balloons before expiring, so he was pretty useless up there. Luckily, our press was able to pop basically everything that wasn't camouflaged. Now, I was pretty confident that we'd win, so instead of getting a boost, we chose a 040 Buccaneer and put it in the bottom left pool. This is especially good because his projectiles will bounce off the temple if not used, giving him a second chance to hit balloons. But we made him a 042 to help out with camos since our crossbow up top isn't doing great. After this, we placed a wizard next to Quincy and slowly upgraded him to a shimmer on 17. This turned out to be a game changer because of how much range he now has. Even placed in this spot, he can decamo half the map, and after we made him a Necro on 22, anything popped in his range refills his graveyard. So we never have to worry about accidentally draining it again, even with his absurd spawn rate. But with our hodgepodge of towers, we pretty easily beat Adora's Temple and made our way to a campfire. This time we didn't miss it. We had plenty of solid options, but we chose to mentor our super monkey up to a 002 Ultra Vision. This way, he starts out with camo detection, and it's easier for us to make him a Dark Knight for boss fights in the future. But we're going to play with our new toy before that. Our next fight was unencrypted, and we had enough money to start off with a super monkey in the middle of the map. Purples came around the corner, and we were blown away with how fast he attacked. This is the first time he's been alone, and we can actually see what darts are his. This attack speed and bouncing darts easily popped the balloons, and we backed him up with an AMD so leads wouldn't be a problem. But the rest of the fight was pretty standard. Reinforce these two with a Moab Press and Necromancer, and do whatever we want after that. This time around, we got a Bloon Dissolver and a Spactory, but what was really fun was placing a 302 Wizard at the end. He could see most of the track, and his projectiles were going crazy since they'd bounce off everything. But after this fight, we came to another junction. We could go up and have 2 less fights, or we could go down where we get 3 extra chests and a campfire. The choice was easy as no fight really scared us at this point. We were snowballing pretty hard, and I wanted to pick up as many artifacts as possible to keep this going. So we chose the bottom path. The first fight was just like every other we've had recently, but the challenge tile got a bit spicy. We have to beat rounds 10 through 37 of Haunted while spending $23,300 or less to get a legendary artifact, meaning we have to leave $16,310 on the counter. Doable. We began with our new favorite start of a super and AMD, but the slower projectile speed actually bit us in the butt here. He missed several balloons on the far side, causing us to lose 13 lives on the first round. Not a great start, but after we put the super to target close, we were back in business. Nothing was getting by our duo, and we made it to a Moab Press, upgrading it to a 024 before Blimp started spawning. And this did great for quite some time, but I wanted to make our super monkey more reliable. So we upgraded him to a 022 for more range, pierce, and most importantly, projectile speed. It's funny that his dart speed is what we care about here, as I've almost never given that a second thought in a normal game, but that's the beauty of Rogue Legends. And to round out our defense, we got a Necromancer on round 23 and followed it up with a second Moab Press. This left us with just $25 to spare, so we have to win as is. Everything was easy until round 35 where the DDTs actually got pretty far. Had they gotten through the zombie balloons, we would have been in trouble, but they popped right at the end. But round 37 is just a harder version of this. The last round we have to beat has way more DDTs. At first we were doing fine, but once the normal balloons started tanking some of the zombies, a DDT got through. causing us to exit and try again. I didn't have the highest of hopes here as we couldn't spend any money, but then we were saved by our alchemist. He put an AMD on our super monkey at the perfect time to pop the DDT that would have leaked, and we handled the ZOMGs after just fine. But this gave us the support specialist legendary artifact. This reduces support monkeys' attack reload time and cooldowns by 35%, but reduces the pierce and cooldown speed of every other category. Overall, another pretty big buff for all our monkeys, it's just that our pierce is getting kind of low. Oh well. We got to test this new attack speed on middle of the road, and holy cow is it ridiculous. Our super monkey throws a volley of darts every time he sees a balloon, and if they're not lead, he pops them pretty quick. I thought this was crazy, but I wasn't ready for our necromancer. Once he started spawning balloons, I was blown away. We couldn't see the track anymore because of how many zombies he was making. From here, we upgraded the super to a 203 Dark Knight, and nothing else really made it on screen. I suppose it helps that the second he hits the balloons, his batarangs bounce off the wall and can hit them again. But this secured us the dub and we moved on. The next couple fights were easy, so we're going to skip to shoots. Rounds 12 through 43. We put our super monkey on the straightaway and watched him mow down the balloons. At least for the first round. When he started firing left on round 13, some of his darts would hit the obstacle and redirect straight down. This lowered our DPS a bit, and when a ceramic layered on top of a rainbow, some balloons got through. Finally, our lack of pierce is catching up to us. At the time, I thought this was a lead issue, so we got down a 022 boomer to make sure it didn't happen again. And that turned out to be a great call because of how many fortified leads came on 14. Because of this, they weren't a problem, but this extra spending made us low on money, causing us to sell the wizard to get a Moab press in time for the blimp on 15. And even with this knockback, some of the insides got through. They are up to 140% health and speed, but still, I didn't expect that. And as you could have guessed, several balloons got through on 16 too, as we had to take on 3 Moabs here, so a very rough start for us. But we picked up some temp boosts and upgraded our boomerang down bottom to a bionic boomer, and we started defending much better. In fact, we even popped the fortified Moab and camo lead on 19, though we got pretty lucky with a super monkey crit and having AMD on the super at the right time. Because of this, I thought we'd be fine for the camo leads on 20, but as they were getting through, I bought a shimmer only to leak anyway. So we retried the round, and now shimmer is out of stock. Oops. Here, I was wishing we still had splody darts as our super monkey could solo the leads, but before giving up, we gave the super its own personal alchemist, and it was able to pop all but 8 balloons on this round, bringing us down to 89 lives. Now, we're just waiting for the wizard to come back in stock. This was a bit brutal for us as we leaked a ton of balloons on round 22 and had to upgrade our super to have laser vision to pop the BFB on 23. But after all this, we could finally get a necro. We sold the elk and bionic boomer to place a 104 wizard down bottom, then we removed the obstacle to have them stop redirecting our super's lasers away from the balloons. And finally, we were in a good spot. We got a second press and upgraded the super to a 203 Dark Knight. This shut down the balloons and might have been able to win as is, but we piled on top of it. One more press in Dark Knight was more than enough to beat the fortified DDTs of 43. And this unlocked 2 important things for us, a chest and campfire. Now, normally, I'm not too excited about chests, but we got pretty lucky with this one. Among the common artifacts was a beautiful legendary trick shot attacks, which gives us a 020 tack shooter that has 200% range and projectile lifespan. And at the campfire, we mentored the super monkey up to a 003 Dark Knight, drastically reducing how much it costs to get one of these. The only downside, we can't start with a super monkey anymore. We're just short on money. But we have something new to test out this run, the tack shooter. We played the start safe with a Moab press and shimmer and saved straight up for the necromancer upgrade. What was fun about this was we could keep his zombie balloons in his range at all times, so if they ever got a pop, it was guaranteed to fill his graveyard. What could see more than him though was the tack shooter we got down next. This guy could basically see the entire map, and we upgraded him to a 220 just for fun. It's not great, but I did like seeing how slow the tacks were moving and for so long. We moved on from this guy for a bit to get down better defenses like a Dark Knight and Moab press. But then we came back, upgrading it to a Ring of Fire on round 29. and this guy instantly became a global menace. His animation made it look like the flames didn't go too far, but we could tell by the damage he was doing and the burn effects that he could hit balloons from very far away. The rest of the fight was just us messing around, with my favorite part being our maelstrom. We activated his ability on round 46, and the map was instantly filled with ricocheting snowflakes. As you can imagine, we did even better on Resort. Our Ring of Fire could see the whole map, and there were no obstacles to stop him this time. Our Moab presses kept the blimps at the start, and the wall of zombie balloons was tough to get through. Not to mention our Dark Knights we were getting at the end. Honestly, nothing of note happened here other than a bad coming on round 47. That caught me off guard, but we managed to pop it very fast, even though it had tons of extra health. But that just leaves us with a shop and the final boss for stage 2. And unlike previous shops, this one was super useful. We had 23 tokens to spend, and there were 3 artifacts that I wanted: Enchanted Rebuttal, the Unspoken Heroes, and Alchemic Engineering. These 3 let our monkeys push back balloons with every hit, gives every monkey a chance to crit for extra damage, but makes Quincy a little worse, and lets tier 3 and higher engineers convert balloons to gold, but they have 60% less pierce. The first 2 work great with our current build, and chat told me that the engineer one works great with cleansing foams. And with these new artifacts, we jumped into the boss fight. I wanted to start off with a Dark Knight since we had so much money, but there wasn't a great spot for him. And then I remembered. We had a pontoon and portable lake ready for us this entire time. So I slapped one down and put a 203 super in the middle of the map. Then we got a necromancer to handle the normal balloons and a tack shooter to the right with plans of making it a ring of fire. We set the Dark Knight to strong so he focuses vortex and hit play. This lineup works great because of how much range all our monkeys have. We were easily outside of Vortex's stun when we hit the first skull, and we sent him back to the start of the map. What's funny is that he's now outside our DK's range, so we had to wait for him to float back out of the trees to start damaging him again. Luckily for us, we had more than enough defense to handle the normal rounds while we waited. And the second Vortex came out of the trees, we hit his second skull, sending him back. We rinsed and repeated this process while making sure no normal balloons would leak. We got a Moab press and a Dark Knight near the back and started messing around with an engineer. But this waiting game came to an end on round 36 as we finally popped Vortex. He never threatened leaking, he just took his time getting back in range of our monkeys. But beating this fight gave us the essence of Vortex. This makes tier 5 monkeys and level 20 heroes knock back Moab class balloons on hit and have a 10% chance to blow back regular balloons. Not the best artifact for us, as we don't really get tier 5 monkeys or maxed out heroes, but it was better than the Trade Empire or Bez that we would have never been able to afford. And before heading into stage 3, we extracted the artifact we just bought: Alchemic Engineering. I figured we didn't need it this run as we already have good camo detection, but it'll be nice to bring into future campaigns. But now we're on to stage 3, and we were gifted a legendary campfire. This is much better than a normal campfire as it lets us mentor a monkey up to a tier 5, or we can enhance an artifact up to a legendary. After talking through it with chat, we decided to enhance Esoteric Elementalist, which now gives our wizards a 60% chance to freeze, blow back, or set balloons on fire, while also adding a 2/0/0 wizard to our party. This puts us over our 10 monkey cap, so we got rid of our 1/0/1 wizard as this gives us more flexibility with crosspaths. But then it was time for our first fight of stage 3. We were on Town Center and had to beat rounds 3 through 16. Once again, we had way less money than we were used to, so we wung it with a crossbow alchemist and 2/0/2 wizard. This combo can pop just about every balloon type, so we felt pretty safe, and we saved straight up for a necromancer, getting it on round 11. This locked up the win, so we messed around with our new monkey and built a wall of fire. I don't know how often we'll be getting this guy, but walls of fire go crazy with our artifacts, and he places so many of them down that the area turns into a red circle. But beating this map let us open 2 chests. The first gave us Zig then Zag, which makes all of our monkeys shoot in a zigzag pattern, slows their projectiles by 20%, but makes them attack 20% faster. And in the second chest, we got Rare Tit for Tat. This makes our monkeys attack 20% faster, but balloons move 25% faster when in their range. I figured this would be a good trade-off, but with our monkeys having so much range already, this might just give the balloons a permanent speed boost. Excited to try these out, we took on Shoots, a map we've struggled with in the past. This time, we started with a 2/0/2 wizard and a crossbow. I didn't know what to expect, but the zigzag pattern did not disappoint. The attacks were wild, especially the crossbows when they'd bounce sideways off obstacles, but these two were handling the balloons just fine. The only thing this setup is weak to is leads, so we got down a Moab press. I had no idea what to expect with his attack, but it mostly remained the same. If anything, the boomerangs just stayed at the farthest point longer, making a wall of rangs that was tough for the Bloons to get through. So his attack might have gotten better while also getting the attack speed buff. After this, we did a few simple things. Upgrade the wizard to a shimmer so camos would get even easier, and we placed a wall of fire wizard with his flames targeting the intersection. I was excited for something to finally make it to this fire, but the shimmer and press were doing too well. The most impressive part though was how fast this wizard can decamo Bloons now. I have never seen a shimmer get used as much as it was on round 15, but then we upgraded him to a necromancer and the game was over. Nothing was getting through that. Next up, we have a challenge tile, beating rounds 5 through 22 on Lotus Island with $10,600 or less. So we need to leave $7,420 on the counter. We have slightly more money than last fight, so we started with a Moab press and crossbow. This should be fine versus every type of Bloons except camo leads, but we have plenty of time to prepare for those. This was killing it, so we started working on our shimmer. We got a wizard up front, made him a 203, and realized that the necromancer upgrade would put us over budget, so we looked elsewhere. I crosspath their other two monkeys and started looking for a solution. And one was kind of forced on us. When choosing boosts, we didn't get offered a buff, only insta-monkeys and a portable lake. But the last monkey, a 203 ninja, was cheap enough for us to get down. And with him, we kind of smoked the rounds. Nothing was getting through the wall of rangs, especially with this ninja's flash bomb going off so often. But this win gave us yet another legendary artifact. None of the three were that good for us, so we picked up homing projectiles. This makes dart monkeys, bomb shooters, tack shooters, super monkeys, engineers, and dartling gunners have seeking attacks. Though I'm not sure how well this will work with our weird attack patterns and short-lasting projectiles. Excited to try this out, we opened the next fight with a tack shooter, Moab press, and crossbow. I made sure to put the tack shooter far away so it'd have time to show off its seeking potential, but its tacks kind of just rotated around the tower. I'm not sure if it's because the Bloons were getting popped by other monkeys or if Zigzag was overpowering the seeking. Either way, I sold it out of spite and replaced him with a wizard, upgrading him to a necromancer and getting the win. This unlocked two things for us, a chest and a challenge tile. In the chest, we got a rare artifact in the cat's meow. This sets our maximum lives to 9, but any leaked Bloon only counts as 1 life regardless of how strong it is, and we regenerate 3 lives at the end of each round. This will be interesting as we don't leak much anymore, but it would be fun to tank all the camo leads in a run just to get revenge on them from stage 1. But with that, we jumped into the Bloonarius boss rush tile. Here, we need to pop them 60 times for a legendary reward. It's important in these events to get off to a strong start, as that gives you tons of money, so we put a hotshots up front for boss damage, and we got a shimmer and crossbow to pop the normal Bloons. The only thing was some of Bloonarius's Bloons would spawn super far back, so we had to get a Moab press back there to make sure nothing got through. With this, I felt pretty safe, so we got another hotshots up front and we were plowing through the tiers. Before I knew it, we had enough money for a Dark Knight and we made him a 203. This guy's attack speed and weird attack pattern made it look like he was throwing a wall of batarangs and they were trying their hardest to seek out the Bloons. It was kind of funny to watch, but we were popping Bloonarius so fast that it was hard to keep up with everything. What I did know is that we were on pace to pop him 60 times, so I made a necromancer on the right side to make sure we never leaked and accidentally threw the run. Once the exit was locked up though, we started spamming towers like more tack shooters and dark knights. In these events, we tend to get tons of money, letting us pick up monkeys we can't normally afford. So I got a Dragon's Breath to see how well it does with our new artifacts. And he reminded me of our DKs. He threw so many flames at a time that they were stacking up sideways, and his wall of fire was pretty dense. I don't know if anything but purples could get through it. But even with this spending, our bank account kept going up. And before I knew it, we had enough money for the Dark Champion that we got from a boost earlier. Unfortunately, he's a 024, but I guess we'll take that extra range and have him not be weak to purples. This is probably enough as is to get 60 pops, but we had one more goal. An Inferno Ring. It only took about 10 more Bloonarius pops to afford it, and I regretted this upgrade instantly. I thought its animation would be low-key, like the Ring of Fires, but it was quite the opposite, making our entire screen orange as if we were at a rave. All he needed was some EDM music, and it would have been the entire package. But after we got 61 pops, we sold everything and let the Bloons through to end this challenge early. And our legendary reward was Divine Intervention, an upgraded version of the artifact that gives our super monkey the ability to crit. Now our odds are 1 in 600 to deal 1500 times damage, and it added a base super to our party. I wasn't sure how useful this would be, but we kept it around and removed the 011 boomer that we haven't placed in ages. This also let us open a chest, but we got 3 artifacts I didn't want. So we picked up one that gives aces the ability to pin Bloons. This won't affect us in any way since they removed the ace from our party, but it will be something we can sell at the shop later. Now, the last few fights have been pretty easy, so I went into Encrypted thinking we could do anything and still win. But that's not entirely true. We started off with a wizard and crossbow, which did alright, but needed some help with purples and leads. To help out, we got a Moab press. This was fine, but I really wanted to see how well a tack shooter would do in an enclosed space like this, so we sold the crossbow to make room for it. The only problem, we did this right as camo purple started coming, and we can't pop those without it. This might have been fine because we have the cat's meow, but we didn't want to risk a life on it, so we sold the press, upgraded the wizard to a shimmer, and placed the tack shooter I was so excited to try out, making it a hot shots just in time for the leads that come on round 9. And now we're finally in the clear since this combo can handle every Bloon type. For the rest of the fight, we just filled the middle with more tack shooters and upgraded the wizard to a necromancer. Our best tower by far was the Ring of Fire, but I only wanted one of those to make sure purples would never get through again. And every once in a while, we could see this guy freeze some Bloons. Not something we needed, but it was funny to watch. But this surprisingly difficult win gave us a chest and a shop. Once again, the chest gave us 3 artifacts I didn't want, so we picked up a sniper artifact to sell next. The shop, though, had 2 artifacts I wanted to buy. The rare version of bouncing projectiles so we get that extra travel distance, and we're rebuying alchemic engineering. To afford these, we traded in the cat's meow, 1 shot, pincushion flyby, and 6 tokens. Not too bad if you ask me. The next fight was probably the easiest one so far, so I'll breeze through it. We started off with our usual wizard, crossbow, and hot shots. From here, we went to a shimmer for camo detection, sold the crossbow, and replaced him with a Moab press for those beautiful stalls and a surprising amount of popping power. But what made this run so easy was upgrading the hot shots to a Ring of Fire. The second we did this, the Bloons were kept at the start, with only purples and blimps really getting on screen. And this let us save all the way up for a Dark Knight, which locked up the win and let us use a campfire. From here, we had plenty of decent options, but no great ones. So we went with enhancing zigzag to make our monkeys attack 25% faster instead of 20%. A pretty small boost, but one I'm happy to take. And this left us at an intersection. We could go up for 2 campfires and a chest, straight for no fights and a boss rush tile, or we can go down for a legendary fight and a shop. All of them had their perks, but I wanted that guaranteed legendary artifact in only 2 total fights, so we went with the bottom path. This special battle was on Adora's Temple and was about as easy as it gets. We beat the early game with a wizard, crossbow, and hot shots, and we were able to save straight up to a necro, all but guaranteeing the win. We just added a Moab press and 2 more tack shooters to pop everything. But here we learned 2 important things. The first is that 1 Moab press can easily stall BFBs and below, and the second is that this fight confirmed the Ring of Fire's flames bounce off walls, as blimps would start on fire even though they were behind the temple, like the BFB on round 31. But we ended the run by placing Quincy up top. We haven't been using him much recently because he doesn't benefit from all our artifacts, easily making him our worst monkey. Kind of sad, but it's the truth. But this fight gave us the legendary Fata Morgana artifact, which increases Mermonkey range, pierce, projectile lifespan, and cooldown speed by 50%. Plus, it adds a 020 Mermonkey to our party. And to make room for it, we removed the base super monkey we have yet to use. Now, we have to test out our new monkey, especially with all the buffs it gets from this artifact. So we started off with him, a crossbow, and hot shots on Spice Island. Right away, we noticed how weird the Mermonkey's tridents worked with zigzag. It almost seemed like he was affected more than other monkeys, but he was doing a solid job defending, so we couldn't complain. We backed this up with a shimmer to make sure nothing would leak, and then we went back to the Mermonkey, upgrading him to a Riptide champion. Instantly, we loved his attacks. He launched wave after wave at the Bloons, but they moved so slow that by the time they made contact with the Bloons, there were tons of them on the way. So a wall of waves would crash into the Bloons, and as long as there weren't leads or purples, he'd wash them away. Later on, we upgraded this guy again to an Arctic Knight, making its main attack much better. But what was fun to use was his ability. On round 31, we shredded the ZOMG by having him launch hundreds of ice balls at the green blimp, and these zigzagged too. But we rounded out this run with a symphonic resonance we got from a boost. Not something I'd normally pick up, but he has so much range that it was a global song. If a Bloon made it on screen, this new Mermonkey would stall it. The next couple fights were pretty much the same, taking on Moon Landing and Haunted, with Mermonkeys being our main damage dealers. We made two important stops along the way though. The first was a shop where we traded in Homebrew Alchemy and 9 tokens to get Sticky Situation and Crystal Crash. These make our monkeys deal 1.5 times damage to glued and frozen balloons. And the second was a campfire where we mentored the Mermonkey up to a 0-3-0 Riptide champion. Now we can place this guy down for just $2,255. But that brings us to a challenge tile, an endurance race where we have 5 minutes to deal as much damage as possible in a race format. If we deal 125k, we get a common artifact, 150 and we get a rare, and if we deal 200,000 damage or more, we get a legendary. We start on round 12 with more monkey than we're used to, but still not quite enough to get a Dark Knight. So we place a Moab Press, crossbow, shimmer, and tack shooter. We spam quick send rounds, crosspathed our monkeys, and upgraded our tack to a hot shots. This let us send through round 28 pretty easily, where we upgraded the tack again to a ring of fire. And because we have water up front, I got our new and improved Mermonkey up there, crosspathing him as a 0-3-2. Now we're 1 minute into the race and already halfway to the legendary reward. This gave us enough money to get a 203 Dark Knight, but then I sent way too many rounds. As we hit the 200k goal, we got Pierce camped and DDTs slowly made their way through the map. We had a good amount of money and probably could have popped them with a hot shots, but I wasn't worried since we're already at the max reward. A DDT got through, ending the run in a timely manner, but unlike boss rushes, this counts as a loss and we didn't get an artifact, so we had to spend a life to try again. I was tempted to just move on, but we hit the goal so easily I figured a legendary artifact was worth a life. Here we had a similar start, but we took the rounds much slower. We were not in a rush this time around. Our shimmer made everything visible, the Moab Press was amazing at stalling blimps, and our Ring of Fire was our main Bloon popper. Then we backed these up with another press and hot shots and upgraded our wizard to a necro. We're easily on pace to hit the goal as we did 100k damage about a minute and a half in. But from here, we just got another press, tack shooter, and necromancer and coasted to victory. Once we hit 200k, I stopped sending extra rounds to make sure we don't leak, and when the 5-minute timer was up, we had dealt 441,000 damage. And our reward for this was corrosive torpedarts. This makes tier 3 and higher monkey subs glue balloons with Bloon Silver Acid and adds a 0-2-0 sub to our party, which works well with our monkeys dealing 1.5 times damage to glued balloons. But to fit this guy in, we had to remove the Spike Factory from our loadout. We haven't used him in a hot minute, but it was still sad to see him go. Then, at the shop, we bought Confuddling Spelling, which makes our monkeys deal 1.5 times damage to tranced and stunned balloons. We don't really have a way of stunning them with our monkeys, but I figured it could be useful if we get certain ones from a boost. But with that, we took on the stage 3 boss, Blastopopulus. First up, we let Quincy make a comeback by putting him in the bottom right corner to tank meteors. If you didn't know, at every skull, Blast shoots out 3 fireballs that debuff the monkeys they hit, and he targets the closest, farthest, and most expensive monkey you have, so this should always take care of one of the meteors. Then we got a Dark Knight, Hot Shots, Necro, and Moab Press to handle the rounds and damage Blast. The only thing was I forgot that he gets the purple immunity, meaning our 203 Super Monkey couldn't damage him. So we sold him and got a sharpshooter and triple gun sub. This way, the Dart Monkey will tank the closest meteor, and the sub will apply Bloon Silver Acid to everything it hits. This got us through the first skull, and we placed a DK when he came back in stock. This time, we made him a 0-2-3 and put him just off the track so he'll never be the closest monkey to the boss. He's still the most expensive, but that might change in the future. This Dark Knight was putting in work, getting us through the skulls pretty quick, and with every temp boost we picked, it got faster. I was starting to get confident, but I wasn't sure how we'd do if Blast stunned the screen or placed his rocks in a good spot, so we weren't letting off the gas. I got another hot shots in the small square and put a crossbow right next to the boss. But then our big scare came on round 32. His heat meter finally filled up and he stunned the entire screen, letting camo purples get around the second loop. Luckily, Resort is a very easy and long map, so our Necro was able to decamo them all with a single shimmer. But had the stun lasted any longer, we would have been in trouble, especially with how fast the balloons are this late in the stage. But with Blast's heat meter reset, it was just a matter of time until we won. We picked up a ballistic missile from more glues, but what did Blast in was trapping our Dark Knight inside the wall of rocks with him, letting the batarangs bounce around in there like crazy, so he shredded the last section of health. This gave us a legendary reward, but for the first time, we didn't take the boss's essence. It only affects tier 5 monkeys and level 20 heroes, and we don't get either of those. And one of our options was a 0.52 elite sniper, one of the cheapest tier 5s in the game, and we might be able to get it down next stage as it'll only cost us $13,075. Plus, it works great with the essence of Vortex that lets tier 5 monkeys push back blimps with every attack. And because we traded in all the artifacts we're not using at shops, we actually skipped extracting any of them. But just like that, we beat stage 3 with our only heart lost being on the challenge tile retry. Going into stage 4, we had to remove a monkey to make room for the elite sniper. It was a tough decision, but we got rid of the 101 glue gunner as we rarely use him. But here's where I took a break, and when I came back to BTD6, I forgot to record the first minute of stage 4. All we missed was using a campfire to heal up to 4 lives and the start of the first fight. And unfortunately for us, it's on Muddy Puddles, the hardest map we've faced so far. To cover all 4 tracks, we started with a sub, crossbow, alchemist, and wizard. This gave us camo vision and lead popping power for every track. Though the global sub was a bit unreliable because the zigzag attacks made its starts take a while to get to the outside lanes. To try to give it more time, we put a tack shooter in the middle of the map so the sub can see all 4 entrances. With this, we were able to beat the first couple rounds while only leaking a camo purple on round 7. Our first leak in a while, but we made sure it wouldn't happen again by putting a crossbow on the left to help out. But now, I wanted to test how this submergence support works with our corrosive darts. So we got a second sub down, sold the alchemist, and upgraded the submarine to a 320. It was hard to see at first, but eventually we saw him apply Bloons Solver acid every time his radar pulse went off, making him our new favorite decamo option. The only downside was that our crazy attack speed buffs don't affect how fast he decamos, so it's pretty slow, especially considering Bloons get faster with every fight. For now though, this easily beat the rounds on the right side of Muddy Puddles, so we got a new sub down on the left and upgraded him to a submerge on round 13. This covered most of the map, giving us ridiculous damage for so cheap, and I wanted to win with mostly subs, so we sold both crossbows and the wizard to make this a sub-dominant run. With this money, we upgraded the rightmost submarine to our reactor, which made him glue things with every instance of radiation damage, which means every bloon that passes through his range automatically gets glued. And to make sure we didn't lose a run we should easily beat, I got a Moab press for the final few rounds. Blimps are the only thing that can push into our subs, and this guy completely counters them, making for a very easy win. And this brings us to the first legendary challenge tile of the entire campaign. We need to beat Tree Stump with $10,350 or less, meaning we need to leave $72.45 on the counter. To do this, we got a portable lake near the entrance and plopped a 320 sub right next to the track. This was able to glue everything as it can see all the way around the stump. To make things a little easier though, we got a Moab press in the middle for easy stalls and started saving money. We could probably win as is, but the reactor upgrade was well within our budget, so on round 11 we spent the $3,105 to make the sub a 420, which popped just about everything off the screen for the rest of the run, awarding us 2 legendary artifacts. The first selection pool was amazing as we got the option to make every monkey attack faster, let our monkeys push back small blimps and bloons, or get splody darts back. Honestly, we can't go wrong with this decision, but we picked tit for tat for that extra 40% attack speed. The second selection pool was a bit weaker as we could pick extra attack speed that gets worse with every monkey placed, extra attack speed but makes our monkeys more expensive, or the legendary version of alchemic engineering. But because I like cheap monkeys and we aren't really using engineers, we picked too many cooks. The exact numbers are that our monkey's attack reload time is reduced by 45%, but is increased by 5% with every monkey placed. I figured we rarely get 8 or more monkeys down, so this should be a net positive, and even if we do place that many, we're probably killing it. Plus, it makes our monkeys much better at the start of each fight, which is really the only time we struggle. But that brings us to an intersection where we could go up to skip everything and be very close to the stage 4 boss, or we can go to the right for 4 fights, a chest, campfire, and a challenge tile. Obviously, I wanted more rewards, so we picked the longer route, for better or for worse. The first fight was on Spring, but the submergence support made this fight so boring that we're going to skip to the next one, Pat's Pond, rounds 6 through 25. I wasn't sure how we were going to defend both sides, so I just got two of our cheapest towers, a crossbow on the left and a submarine on the right. Now, there isn't a great spot for this guy, so we removed the rock to fit it right next to the track. This did great as the sub soloed the right side, and the only balloons that made it past the crossbow were leads, which are so slow they didn't stand a chance versus our Bloons Silver Acid. This start actually let us save straight up for a reactor, making pink balloons much less scary. Before this upgrade, they'd sometimes get close to getting through, but now they get popped off screen, letting us spend some money on the other side of the map. Here, we buffed the crossbow with an AMD, and these two clamped down the left side. Not even Moabs would get past them, especially once we upgraded the Alchemist to a Berserker Brew. It didn't have 100% uptime on the buff, but it was good enough. I mean, they even popped the Fortified Moab on round 19 just fine. During this time, we put a 320 Wizard down by the reactor. It wasn't necessary, but I wanted to see how many walls of fire he could place, and I was not disappointed. He put so many down that there was just a red circle at the base of the flames, and nothing made it through the wall. But we coasted to victory after upgrading the crossbow to a sharpshooter. All we did in the meantime was pick up temp boosts and stockpile money. This win let us access a chest where we got the rare version of ability stacking. This lets abilities loop to gain 2 extra charges, but they're 20% slower for every monkey except Psy. We don't really have any use for this now, but it was the best artifact available. To see it in practice though, I wanted to get our elite sniper down. So in the next fight, on high finance, we beat the early game with our sub, crossbow, and AMD. And once we had the money, we upgraded the sub to a reactor, sold the other 2 monkeys, and backed him up with a Moab press. Honestly, the sub probably could have soloed, but the boomer complements it so well, I had to get it down. This smoked the rounds and let us get an elite sniper on round 27. While it's a very cheap tier 5 monkey, $13,000 still takes a while to save up for in Rogue Legends. But the second we got it down, we saw the power it brings. It instantly knocked a fortified BFB back to the start of the map and kept all of round 28 at the entrance. This was the first time we got a tier 5 monkey after beating Vortex, and wow, was that nice. Something to remember for the future. Now, the sub has made recent fights very easy, so for the next 2 maps, we strayed away from it just to mix things up. We started with a crossbow and AMD as they can pop every type of balloon. On Stream Bed, we backed them up with a Ring of Fire and pivoted over to a Necromancer, while on Town Center, we went straight for a Necro from the start. In both these fights, the spawn rate of the reanimated balloons was off the charts. They were packed so close together that we couldn't see the track or even some of the zombies. The only problem it had was keeping the graveyard full, as it spawned so many per second that it would drain down to 0. But this let us move on to a campfire, where we mentored the sub up to a 120. It was painful to use this on such a cheap upgrade, but eventually it'll be worth it as we're working towards starting with a submergent support. And now we get to take on a Blast a Populous boss rush tile. The second reason we chose this longer path. To get a legendary reward, we need to pop him 65 times on firing range before he leaks. So we start with a sub and tack on the right side of the map and a crossbow and AMD on the left. This blew through the first 10 pops of blast, giving us enough money to remove the obstacle and get a Dark Knight in the middle of the map. This upped our damage a ton, but the meteors were slowing us more than I'd like. To partially get around this, we put a tack shooter way down in the bottom left of the map to tank the furthest fireball. This helped a bit, but we were popping him so fast that the fireballs were getting spread out pretty well. To keep up our pace though, I wanted to up our damage by gluing everything. We started with a submergent support, but quickly upgraded him to a reactor. Then we got another DK, making him a 0-2-3, as the Plasma Blast crosspath can't damage Blast a Populous. This worked very well, but then his heat meter filled up and stunned the screen. This let the balloons get surprisingly far as we popped some of them as they were turning the final corner. What's funny though, was right after this, we watched our Super Monkeys attacks burn up way before they could reach Blast. It was like watching those cat videos where their legs are too short to hit what they're swinging at. Luckily, this only lasted a few seconds and we went back to popping him quickly. But to prevent leaking during these stuns in the future, we got an elite sniper. This guy will always be able to pop the leaking balloons after a stun, and we can go back to getting more boss damage. And my way of getting this? More 0-2-3 super monkeys. But we were making money faster than these guys were coming back in stock, so we mixed in an Arctic Knight, placing this mermonkey by the reactor. But here, we have 47 pops, and Blast is only halfway through the map, so we started messing around. We got a crossbow master, sold some monkeys to reduce the lag, and upgraded one of our supers to a dark champion. And this let us pop Blast 74 times before leaking, letting us choose one of 3 legendary artifacts. Absolute ability, which makes monkeys attack 10% slower, but abilities cool down 30% faster. Critical impact, which lets tier 3 and higher mortars have a 1 in 10 chance to crit for 500% damage, or battlefield commission, which changes how hero XP works. Instead of getting experience for each round, they gain 2 XP for each bloon popped. And while 0 of the 3 were useful for our current strategy, we chose the Hero XP one as I might extract it for a hero-based run in the future. Obviously, we had to test out this new Battlefield Commission artifact, so in the next fight we put Quincy near the front and backed him up with a submergence support. This way, Quincy will have plenty of time to attack, and the sub will clean up everything that gets past him. It's funny that Quincy is still our worst monkey, but I'm hoping we can get him to level 20 and make use of the Essence of Vortex. He was actually leveling up pretty quick, but I wanted to test something. He was definitely getting XP for every bloon he popped, but it kind of looked like the subs pops were counting too. So we sold and replaced Quincy further back, and his XP dropped to 0. So it has to be him dealing the damage, which was our assumption, as it'd be way too easy to get him to max level otherwise. We put him back up front and buffed him with an alchemist. But this little detour of starting him back at level 1 lowered his damage so much that on round 16 we gave up on Quincy. We sold him and the alchemist to get a reactor and Moab press. And even though we're now facing fast and tanky bloons with ZOMGs coming in the 30s, it only took another press and a ring of fire to win. The next fight was on Tinkerton, but we kept the bloons at the entrance basically the entire time, so we'll skip to the fun fight. Bloonarius boss rush on Bazaar. Here, we have to defend both tracks, so we got a hotshots where Bloonarius spawns, a submergence support to glue him, and we put a crossbow and elk on the right side of the map. This deleted his first several health bars, but his bloons were spawning very close to the exit, so we put a crossbow in the top right. Then we got another hotshots at the start to double our boss damage. This got us so much money so fast that we bought an elite sniper and upgraded our sub to our reactor. Bloonarius hasn't made the turn yet, and we've popped him over 30 times. Unsure what to do here, we got a 203 Dark Knight on the left. Now, we only need 65 pops to get a legendary, and it's pretty clear we're on pace for that, so we put a Necromancer in the back. I'd be blown away if any bloons made it past this guy. But from here, we kind of just filled out the map. We placed a few more Dark Knights, a second reactor, and started getting some wild upgrades. I'm talking an Archmage, Dark Champion, and even a Pop Sidon. This let us get to 91 pops while Bloonarius was only halfway through the map, but the game was lagging so bad that this fight would have taken like 30 more minutes to finish. So we exited to home as this fixes laggy games. The only thing is that boss rushes don't save mid-fight. So we had to spend a life to redo it, even though we crushed the goal. Annoyed, we did something super similar, but once we got 67 pops, we sold everything to end the fight early. And this gave us the legendary version of Sticky Situation, which makes monkeys deal 2 times damage to glued bloons. We had the common version, which gave us 1.5x damage, so this is a straight up upgrade. On to the last fight before the stage 4 boss, and it's perfect for us. Balance. The obvious start was a submergence support where we upgraded it to a reactor the second we could afford it. The bloons have to loop around the center several times before leaving, and our sub can glue it all. And another tower that works great with this is the tack shooter, so we put one in the dead center and upgraded him to a ring of fire. If they weren't purples or camo, they didn't really make it on the map. But those two didn't stand a chance versus our reactor, so we were pretty safe. We backed this up with our usual Moab press, but then we got a sentry expert from a boost, and I wanted to place him because of our insane attack speed. Instantly, he started throwing down sentries way too fast. I'm talking like 3 a second. I was pretty excited to see where this goes, but he put so many down that we started lagging like crazy. And while I loved having him in the center, I couldn't stand the constant freezing, so we sold him just a round after getting him, and the lag instantly went away. But we used this money to get an elite sniper up top. This was the first time we got an elite sniper in a normal fight well before the ending, and we actually got to use his supply drop ability. Even in Rogue Legends, it gives us $3,000, which pays for himself after just 5 uses. And this let us afford the Energizer by the end of the fight. I got it just for the memes, but my eyes were open to how strong it could be. Not even the DDTs on 42 and 43 could get through the vortex knockback of our sub and sniper combo. But this leaves just 2 things to do before the phase fight. The first is to to open a chest where we got the Just Like Magic common artifact. This halves the attack speed of tier 5 monkeys, but every tower in their radius deals 25% more damage to Moab class balloons. And the second is the shop. Here, there wasn't anything special, so we upgraded our alchemic engineering from common to rare, which cuts the pierce reduction on engineers from 60 to 45%, and we replaced the 011 engineer in our party with a 012. But now it's time to take on FaZe, and the map is ouch. Oof. Time to break out the big guns. We started with a reactor in the middle of the map and placed our elite sniper on first so nothing leaks. The only thing, I completely blanked on our new artifact having his attack speed, so he's significantly worse than last fight. Oh well. For boss damage, we got a Dark Knight on the left and spent the rest of our money on a tack shooter to pop the normal balloons. And with that, we hit play. FaZe spawned on the top left track and started marching towards the exit. We put the Dark Knight on strong to focus FaZe down and upgraded the tack shooter to a hot shots. This worked well, but we weren't making much money. By the time we finished the first skull, we didn't even have enough money for laser blasts on our DK. But this skull actually helped us out a bit. Here, FaZe made a portal so every balloon now spawns on this track, letting the elite sniper stall the blimps even better. For now it's nice, but later on it'll be scary when the portal is near the exit. And this is where I was super happy about the elite sniper. We used a supply drop to buy plasma blasts, drastically increasing our DPS. And we moved the super to the right so he hits FaZe first and the rest of his pierce can be used to damage the balloons behind him. But because we were so low on money, this is all we had to work with for a while. We kept taking temp boosts and watched our tower slowly whittle FaZe down. But money was a problem. We had to stick with these monkeys for the next couple skulls and watch FaZe jump forward on round 32 and again on 33. All I wanted was another Dark Knight, as they have built-in camo detection to always be able to see FaZe, but we have to wait a little longer. FaZe was crossing the second intersection when we sold the hot shots and used supply drop twice thanks to our looping artifact. And this lined up perfectly for when the Dark Knight came back in stock. We got this new one down and upgraded it to a 203 right as FaZe jumped forward again. He's about 2/3 of the way through the map and the balloons are spawning right behind him, but we kept marching our DKs down the track with them. Just another perk of the bottom path super monkey. But by the time we got to the final skull, our Dark Knights were at the very right of the screen and FaZe was on top of them. Luckily, he was still in range of our reactor, so we were getting that 2 times damage to glued balloons. And to make sure nothing leaked, we put a Moab press on the right and buffed our supers with a Berserker brew. And this was able to pop FaZe on ouch pretty close to the exit. But this gives us a surprisingly important artifact. If we have a weakness, it's relying on the sub or shimmer to decamo balloons, and this fight gave us the essence of FaZe, which lets every monkey see camos and deal triple damage to them. And at the extraction menu, we sent ability stacking back to the lobby. While it's great for some strats, it just slows down how fast our elite sniper can generate money, so we wanted it out of here. And with that, we're moving on to the final stage of this campaign. Now, we get to choose between 2 different spawns. One in the top left that's only 3 fights away from the boss, or one way down bottom 13 fights away. If you made it this far into the video, you know I chose the longer track. It'll be tough by the end with the stacking speed and health modifiers, but the rewards are too juicy to turn down. So we started far away and hit up that campfire. The plan has been to mentor our sub up to a submergent support, but now that we have full camo detection with the essence of FaZe, I started to rethink it. We don't really need a decamoer anymore, but we couldn't come up with anything better than a super cheap balloon solver. So we made our sub a 220. We told our monkey to make his way down the path and take on the first fight of stage 5. Encrypted rounds 5 through 22. Now this is a great map for us as we can put a hot shots on the center stone and let his tacks bounce off the walls. But if the first fight is going to round 22, I'm not looking forward to what rounds we'll have to beat near the end of the stage. And while this tack shooter can pop every type of balloon, it takes a while for them to get inside the walls. So we put a submerge and support down to glue the balloons early and speed things up. This probably could have won as is, but we had money to spend. So we upgraded the sub to a reactor, and at the very end, we bought a 302 wizard. We haven't gotten an arcane spike in a long time, and it was funnier than I remembered. The screen was quickly filled with his purple bolts, and the balloons didn't really make it on the map. But this was a special fight, so we got a legendary reward instead of shop tokens. We had the option between a Bomb Blitz, a Megalodon, or Dream Teams. And because tier 5s are hard to afford, we went with the artifact. This makes subs, ninjas, druids, wizards, and beast handlers attack faster, have shorter cooldowns, and they get 50% more range. And while we don't use most of these monkeys, an extra range submersion support could be super nice. But right after this, we made our way to a shop. Our reroll artifact hasn't been working, so that was an easy trade-in. And we thought about selling just like magic, as it makes our tier 5s worse, but I want to see what the stats are if we upgrade it to a legendary at the sparkly campfire down the road. So we just traded in our rare reroll for a common Pops Fired, which causes balloons that are on fire to explode, damaging nearby balloons. But that brings us to our first intersection. Going left would give us 2 fights, a chest, and a shop, while going right brings 5 fights, a chest, campfire, and a challenge tile. We went right. While I was expecting a very easy fight, the next one actually made me a bit nervous. Covered Garden runs 6 through 25. I wasn't sure if the shifting ceiling would be tough with monkeys being out of stock and the limited money, so we played it safe, starting off with a hot shots near a wall, letting the tack shooting right bounce back towards the track, essentially doubling the number of tacks going in that direction. This smoked the first few rounds, and we backed it up with a submergence support once the opening was on the bottom left. This let us glue just about everything, ending our worries. But now, it was time to experiment with a new tower. We built a 2-3-0 Dragon's Breath up front. We haven't built this guy in a while, and we wanted to see how he does. His walls of fire were as crazy as ever, and when more balloons started coming in the 20s, he would fill the entrance with flames. I couldn't tell if this was his max attack speed, or if it's all that was needed to pop everything. Either way, I was happy with him. And we ended the fight by showing off the Ring of Fire to chatters that weren't around for last stage. But the next few fights were way too easy. Hot shots or submergence support just won us the game. So on Rake, we decided to mix things up. We started with a Wall of Fire and a crossbow. Together, they can pop every type of balloon, and it was nice to have different attacks to watch. On round 16, we had enough money to buy Dragon's Breath again, and I absolutely loved it. Unlike Covered Garden, we got a long runway to watch his flamethrower go, and when Moabs came, it was funny to watch the waves of flames head their way. But we already have enough to beat round 34, so I backed them up with some of our OG towers. I'm talking a Moab Press and Necromancer. I'd be surprised if any blimp could push into this boomer, and the Necro is always a good time. Though he seems to like bringing his graveyard down to 0 these days. So that's something we'll have to work on. But to guarantee the win, we got a 0-2-3 Dark Knight and a Submarine. I wasn't going to lose a life because we were testing out new monkeys. After this, we got to stop at another campfire, and while we were tempted to stray from the plan, we stuck with it and mentored the sub up to a 3-2-0 for a super cheap submergence support. It only costs $1,560 to get this guy now, and I'm excited to use him on a Boss Rush tile, specifically versus FaZe. This was on Carts and Darts, where we have no water, but the portable lake came into play again. We removed the obstacle, placed this water, and got a sub in the middle of the map for global glues. Then, for boss damage, we got a hot shots up front and buffed him with an AMD. This popped FaZe 10 times in a matter of seconds, letting us quickly get a second hot shots and a 2-0-3 Dark Knight, bringing us to 25 pops almost instantly. This is great because we only need to get to 70 for a legendary reward, but we were popping him so fast that it was hard to place more monkeys with how often temp boosts were being offered to us. It's a good problem to have, but I was still struggling. Pretty soon, we had 4 hotshots near the front and an elite sniper to buff our Dark Knight. Here, it was pretty clear we'd hit 70 pops, so I calmed down on placing monkeys, just spending our money in fun ways. We upgraded the super to a Dark Champion, got an Energizer, and even built a Perma Brew. Around this time, we hit the 70 pop goal, so I was just listening to chat on what towers to get. We tried out a Bomb Blitz, which was surprisingly underwhelming, and then started selling everything to end the run. But before we leaked, we tried a Pop Sidon. Even by himself, he was able to solo the rounds. His waves constantly crashed off the edges of the map and seeked out the balloons, and every hit would knock them back thanks to the essence of Vortex. But once we got to 92 pops, we sold this Mermonkey and let FaZe through. This let us choose between 3 legendary artifacts. One makes a bunch of monkeys act like Dartling Gunners, the second lets magic monkeys push balloons and small Moabs back on contact, and the third makes ninja monkeys much better. But because I don't like microing and we aren't running ninjas, we chose Enchanted Rebuttal for that knockback on every monkey. But then Chat and I had a terrible idea. What if we started the next fight with a lead to gold? Theoretically, it can pop every type of balloon, it's cheap enough to start with, and should have a ton of attack speed. The only thing is this fight is on shoots. I wasn't sure what to expect, but boy was I happy we tried it out. Any lead gave us an extra $50, he popped the normal balloons just fine, and he'd normally freeze the ceramics. Between the acid puddles and his crazy attack speed, he could keep up with the rounds, at least until 15 when Moab started coming. Here, we backed him up with a submergence support, but he'd made us so much money by this point that we couldn't be anything but happy. And from here, we did the normal strat of a reactor into a ring of fire for an easy win. But this brings us to another intersection. We can go left for 3 fights, 2 challenge tiles, and a chest, or to the right for 6 fights, 1 challenge tile, a chest, and 2 campfires, one of which is legendary. And I can't turn that down, so we went to the right again. The challenge tile was on carts and darts, just like the last one, but this time we have to beat it with $32,300 or less. So we need to leave $22,610 on the counter. We started off just like the phase fight, with a portable lake and sub in the middle of the map and a hotshots right above it. Normally this would be enough to win, but we need to beat all the way through on 46. So we upgraded the sub to our reactor, the tack to a ring of fire, and still had enough money to buff them with an elite sniper. This held everything to the start of the map and got us a legendary artifact. We could choose between one that reduces our projectile speed but buffs our damage, an artifact that makes alchemists attack twice as fast and have a 1 in 20 chance to crit for 50 times damage, or no more please, that gives us the option to ban an instamonkey from being offered as a choice for the rest of the campaign. And while the extra damage was probably the best choice, we already had the rare version of it. So we got homebrew alchemy to make our lead to golds even better, which is way cooler in my mind. Plus, the AMD buffs go wild. Naturally, we had to see this better version, so we started the next fight with a 0-2-3 alchemist. This makes his acid a bit better, but more importantly, it adds a ton of damage to Moabs. His attacks now deal 5 damage to blimps and 20 damage to fortified ones. And with this extra damage, he was smoking the rounds. Not only could he handle the normal balloons, he was popping blimps just fine, especially the fortified one on round 19. And it was fun to see the mini knockbacks he applied to them with each attack. But it was round 22 where the balloons started to cause him trouble. They weren't leaking, but it was getting close. Between the rubber and lead to gold upgrades, we'd made enough money for an elite sniper up top, easily giving us the popping power for the next several rounds. We used his supply drop ability whenever possible, and we were able to save up for the Bloon Master Alchemist on round 31. And this tier 5 elk did not disappoint. If a blimp came on screen, it was held outside the maze by our 2 tier 5s and shrunk down to a red by the BMA's special potion. And we ended the run with a super maelstrom, using its ability on round 46 and filling the map with snowflakes. The only thing that would have made it better is if the blades would have trimmed the hedges down to nothing as they were visibly going through them. But this brings us to the legendary campfire we've been waiting on all stage. We finally get to see the stats on an upgraded just like magic. But unfortunately for us, it doesn't make our tier 5s attack faster, it just ups the extra damage to nearby monkeys, so we're going to get rid of it. What we did mentor though was Zig Then Zag, which brings its attack speed bonus up from 25% to 40, and this means our alchemist got that much better. We started the next fight with a lead to gold, and he was making us tons of money right off the bat. Round 14 is one of the rounds we've been targeting with this guy as it's full of leads, and while he probably could solo for a while, we put a submergence support in the middle of all 3 craters. This spot gives the alchemist just enough time to pop leads and get that extra money, but apply glue to everything else that doesn't get one shot. But then we had plenty of money to spend. We started off with an elite sniper and started hunting through the boosts for a tech bot. This takes away from the instas and temporary buffs we can get in this fight, but we're strong enough as is, and I was tired of pushing the supply drop button. It took a while, but on round 32 we finally found one and spent the $375 to get it down. With this automatic ability, we had the money to get whatever we wanted. We already had an Arctic Knight and Ring of Fire, and bought a Moab Press and Dark Knight for the later rounds. For a while, nothing really got on screen, but then we saw something we haven't seen in ages. A bad came on round 47 and actually lived for a few seconds. Disappointed in our monkeys, we upgraded the tack shooter to an inferno ring, making moon landing look like the surface of the sun. And we didn't really see a balloon after that. The last 3 fights were all super easy. They were on intermediate maps that our monkeys were great at, and we could get away with just about anything. We beat the early game with an alchemist or submarine, got tons of money with an elite sniper, and beat the late game with tier 5s like a glaive lord, Bloon Master Alchemist, or Prince of Darkness. But a few important things happened around this time. The first was deleting the just like magic artifact, so our elite sniper now attacks twice as fast as he has been. The second was a campfire where we upgraded the sub to a 420 reactor. I figured we get this guy just about every game, and we can now place them for just $2,820. And the third was the shop right before the final boss. We had 35 tokens to spend and a big reason to buy artifacts. The only thing was this might have been the worst shop of the entire campaign. We didn't like any of the options, so we just picked up a common cornered beasts. This makes tier 3 and higher beast handlers have 20% more range and attack faster the more bloons are in their radius. We're not going to use this though, so we removed the beast handler from our party. We bought it just in case we can extract after this boss. But with that, we get to take on Bloonarius on Water Park. Stage 5 bosses are incredibly tough, but I think we have a chance with how much we've scaled. The only thing is everything has 170% speed and health because we took the longer path, and Bloonarius spawns a ton of bloons, so we'll have our work cut out for us. We started with a reactor in the middle, a Dark Knight and Ring of Fire on the platform, and a Moab press near the back. This should be able to pop the normal rounds just fine, and we can focus on Bloonarius. We started off a bit slow because the boss was outside our Super Monkey's range, but then he spit out a couple fortified ZOMGs and several DDTs before we even hit the first skull. And before we cleaned these up, he spawned even more of them, again and again and again. We were barely holding on as some of these blimps would start so far along the track. I'm talking at the Moab press. To help with these, we wanted to get a Necro in the back to make the Great Wall of Zombies. And for once, his graveyard would probably stay full because of how many bloons Bloonarius is making. The only thing is, we didn't have the money, so we had to stop at his Shimmer. It still added some damage, but not nearly as much as we needed. This is the same problem we had versus FaZe, the stage 4 boss. We can keep up with the normal rounds just fine, but we don't have the money to keep up with the boss. Luckily for us, Bloonarius only has 20% speed, so we have some time, but then we hit the first skull. 3 fortified bads and tons of Moab spawn on top of the usual ZOMGs and DDTs. To help with this, we got an attack speed temp boost, but holy cow, are there a ton of blimps for us to pop. Before this fight, I thought we were scaling too fast, but now I'm seeing we actually need this much popping power. All of our monkeys were dealing with the boss's spawns, while the Ring of Fire was beating the normal rounds and making us money. We got enough for the Necromancer as the bads reached our reactor. We made sure he only spawned bloons on the bottom track, and instantly DDTs got much easier. But those bads were marching on us, and once they started tanking the zombie bloons, the DDTs got further and further. They were getting to the very edge of the Necro's bloons when the Dark Knight finally popped the bads and we slowly caught up on the insides. It was one heck of a stand by the Moab press, as he wasn't letting anything get by him now that the bads were gone. But then we hit the next skull. We still had so many bloons to catch up on, and once those waves started overlapping, a couple DDTs got through, bringing us down to 2 lives to beat the boss. On to the second try. This time we knew money would be a problem, so we started with an elite sniper for his supply drops. Then we put a 203 Dark Knight on the platform to be our main damage dealer. We started with only the elite sniper hitting Bloonarius to get a head start on his cooldown, and we saved up for a reactor. This lined up with when Bloonarius spawned his first round of DDTs and ZOMGs. And we barely popped the bloons that spawn farther forward, so this double damage glue is needed. Once the DDTs were gone though, we saw how strong the elite sniper's knockback is. That'll definitely be useful going forward. Here, Bloonarius is almost in range of our Dark Knight, meaning we're about to start chunking his health. Luckily, we didn't get a Super Monkey crit on him, as that had spawned way too many bloons for us at once. Instead, we would do a couple thousand damage, pop all his spawns, and go back to hitting him. We were brainstorming what to get, as we're about to have 7 grand once we use supply drop. The plan was to look around at what's in stock when we use it, but before we placed anything, our Super Monkey crit and we hit the first skull. So many bloons were spawning at or past our Dark Knight that we frantically put down a 230 Dragon's Breath, as his flames and walls of fire are amazing at dealing with dense packs of bloons, especially with how fast his attack speed is. And while we did almost leak while we were placing him, we held the line and started hitting the fortified bads. We were popping them faster than our last fight because our elite sniper was keeping the bads in the front, letting our Super Monkey focus them down. To add some single target damage for these guys, we got a tack shooter below the pool and upgraded it to a hot shots once we used supply drop again. With this, we got through the bads before they got too scary, and the elite sniper pushed the ZOMGs all the way back to Bloonarius. Before we could pop all the blimps though, we hit the second skull, and so many DDTs came with it. The only reason we were able to keep up with them was our mega wall of fire we have in the back. Without that, we surely would have leaked. But the massive group of ZOMGs behind the bad was terrifying. And to make matters worse, we only have 3 grand to spend, and our good damage dealers are out of stock because of how long the normal rounds are lasting. So to add at least a little bit of damage, we got a Riptide champion next to the track. The thing was, there were so many Bloons here that were capping out the pierce of our reactor as not everything is being glued, and the bads were leading the charge, marching towards the exit. They made it all the way to the wall of fire, and if they got past that, we're done for. So we got a Moab press in the back to keep any ZOMGs from passing that spot. Ideally, we could get a BMA for this run, but we're too poor for even a 002 alchemist, so I think that's a bit out of our price range. As we put this boomer down, we popped the final bad and got to focus everything else. We were clearly getting pierce capped, but it was fun seeing the super monkey smite from time to time, as we didn't really get to see that much in recent fights. We held this insane rush of Bloons at the wall of fire, with the scariest part being when everything was broken down to BFBs and Moabs, as they were just sitting on the flames on the verge of breaking through for way too long. But this whole time, Bloonarius has been floating along the track and we haven't really damaged him recently. I say this, but as we pushed everything back, it only took one crit from our Dark Knight to deal half a skull's worth of damage, and we went right back to defending his spawns. Our big monkeys were still out of stock, so we upgraded the hotshots to a ring of fire. This brings down our single target damage a bit, but we get much more crowd control, which is what we're struggling with right now. Once again, we made our stand against the evil DDTs at the walls of fire, and once they were dealt with, our elite sniper pushed the ZOMGs back to Bloonarius. This made it easy to deal with the next few waves of DDTs that the boss spit out, as they would spawn up front all by themselves. The only problem was we hit the next skull with all the ZOMGs still alive, so we have an obnoxious number of Bloons to deal with. But we did get another quickening temp boost from the skull, making our monkeys attack 10% faster. Between all our attack speed boosts and our new ring of fire, this is the best we've ever handled a skull. We popped the DDTs and Moab super quick, and our elite sniper was able to keep the ZOMGs behind the bats. Now, it was just up to the Dark Knight to break open these purple whales. And to speed this up a bit, we buffed him with an AMD. It doesn't have the best uptime on the potion, but the Dark Knight attacks so fast that it's still pretty impressive. After taking out 2 of the 3 bads, we microed the super to start popping the ZOMGs behind it while the elite sniper was distracted by the purple whale. I just wanted to thin out this group of Bloons while we have the chance so we don't make a rush so big we can't stop it. And because they're not getting knocked back, we can pop them without damaging Bloonarius too much. I figured we can probably take the time to do this, as he's almost halfway dead and only a third of the way through the map. After a bit of attacking, we broke several ZOMGs down to BFBs, and our other towers popped the bad. So we put the DK back on first to get rid of the DDTs, and then tried to pop as many blimps as possible before we knocked them back too far. What's nice is there are so many of them that our super monkey was able to attack away and not have the pierce for his batarangs to reach Bloonarius. So we actually spent a couple minutes tearing through ZOMGs and below. This didn't last forever though. Eventually, we thinned the herd enough to start damaging the boss again, and as he spawned a bunch of blimps, we crit and hit the next skull. This gave us another boost, but so many blimps spun all at once that the whole right side of the map was an overflowing hodgepodge of ZOMGs and DDTs. If we didn't need the smites for the bads, I would take it off so we didn't have to face so many of his waves at once. I mean, just look at the endless stream of DDTs that are making it to the wall of fire. I don't even know how we kept up with those. And here is where we started thinking about upgrades. We had almost 5 grand in the bank and could really use more damage. The only thing is we're still on round 37, so we can't get another super monkey for 2 more rounds. And I don't think a crossbow or engineer will push us over the edge. We did some quick maths and figured if we sold the mermonkey and attack shooter, we could get another super monkey when he comes back in stock, meaning we could spend the money we have now on a berserker brew to make our best tower even better. The rebuff time on the DK is pretty terrible, but he could reach most of our towers and buff them all. Finally, round 37 ended, getting us 1 round closer to more defense, but Bloonarius and the bads were starting to get far, so we thought of a use for the crossbow. We put 1 in the top left to speed up the rounds and get us more monkeys. At the same time, we smote the bads near the walls of fire and started pushing the blimps back. Holding the Bloons here has happened too many times for it to be a coincidence, so we moved the fires forward to make use of their damage earlier on. We figured we could always move them back if needed. Now that we knocked the Bloons back, we could focus on the normal round again. Unfortunately, the crossbow wasn't cutting it. I suppose 170% health BFBs are probably a bit tough for a tier 3 dart monkey. We let things run for a while, but as we approached the third to last skull, we realized it was time to push for that second Dark Knight. So we put the elite sniper on close to end round 38 faster. This not only got us closer to another super monkey, but also let our current one attack the ZOMGs and BFBs now that our sniper wasn't pushing them back behind the boss. This worked so well that the sniper and crossbow almost finished round 38 by the time we hit the next skull, and the rest of our monkeys nearly caught us up on the ZOMGs on the right. With this skull, we got another attack speed buff, put the sniper back on first to help with this massive rush, and moved the wall of fire back a bit to play it safe. But because we caught up on Bloonarius' blimps, we handled the rush of DDTs very well. It took a while because of how low our frame rate was, but all in all, we did great. In fact, we even felt safe enough to move our Dark Knight to the left and have him finish off round 38. I figured this would be pretty quick and he can still easily reach the bads once they get a little further. The only thing was before we switched him over to attacking the Bloons to the left, he smote Bloonarius, hitting another skull before we even really damaged the current bads. So we have a lot of Bloons heading our way. We picked up yet another attack speed buff, and the Dark Knight finished round 38 as the DDTs made it to the Wizard. Finally, we're on to round 39, and the Super Monkey is back in stock. The only downside is the round change put out all our fires, so the Dragon's Breath had to start it over again as the DDTs were getting to him. Pretty scary, but it was still enough to keep them from leaking. While popping them, we got down a Dark Knight, sold the Mermonkey, and upgraded him to have Plasma Blasts. With these two, we easily defended the small rushes Bloonarius was sending, and they were doing plenty of damage to the bads. Popping them sped up a ton when they got close to the Wizard, as the supers got to focus them, and it only took a couple smites to break their outer layers and knock them back. This brings us to the last skull. We got a rare attack speed boost and let our tower shoot away. They targeted whatever was in first, and their leftover Pierce would occasionally hit Bloonarius, bringing his health lower and lower. But out of nowhere, one of our Dark Knights crit and took out his last 10,000 health, getting rid of Bloonarius once and for all. And after defending for a few more seconds, the beautiful victory text appeared on screen. We got the essence of Bloonarius that gives tier 3 and lower monkeys 1.5 times damage and plus 100% pierce. And we extracted Flaming Hot Puncharang as it adds a 0/1/1 boomer to your party, which could be super nice for future stage 1s. Now, I was hoping this unlocked Endless Mode, but our campaign was complete. We finished our first Rogue Legends run with Quincy. We took on 58 total fights, 12 challenge tiles, collected 59 artifacts, spent 75 shop tokens, chose 633 boosts across everything, lost 9 total hearts, and it only took us 16 hours, 49 minutes, and 26 seconds of playtime to get through all 5 stages. Already worth the $9.99 it took to pick up the DLC if you ask me. But if you guys liked the vid, please leave a like, and if you pick up Rogue Legends, please use creator code Hbomb. It helps the channel out a lot.